In my hometown we had a record shop, and I'm talking about a record shop here with vinyl records, wall to wall, posters on the wall, button badges, and just about everything that you could think of to do with the pop scene at the time. And in that shop was a guy called Sid, and Sid knew everything there was to know about the bands, about the songs, about the gigs that were being played locally. You could ask a question about music to Sid and Sid would know the answer. And to us kids, Sid was a legend. More than a legend, he was an icon. To us he was as big as Elvis. And he had this huge moustache. The reason I grew a moustache was to get a moustache like Sid's. It didn't really happen because Sid's was an awesome moustache, really thick and bushy, and well, mine's not. But yeah, Sid was one of those guys that we talked about, but we never really saw him outside of the record shop. Somebody reckoned they saw him once walking down the road, but we didn't really believe that because Sid belonged in the record shop. I know that sounds a bit strange, but the record shop was nothing without Sid, and Sid maybe was nothing without the record shop, although I don't know because we never tested that. This was a place that the record shop was behind the camera shop, and they were both owned by the same people. We had to go through the camera shop and down some steps and through a little archway, and you came into this den which was absolutely chock-a-block with vinyl, always had music playing, and down the end of this den was the counter, and that was where Sid positioned himself, and there was always kids leaning against the records. You couldn't get to the records because there were school kids leaning against them. So you say, could you pass me Shiwaddy Waddy? Can I have the latest mud? It's there behind your right shoulder. And it was just one great experience to go and be in the record shop. That was our meeting place. It was the life and the soul. And then one day Sid got married, and he married an American girl, and he went to live in the USA. And it was, I don't know what it was like really. Kind of the universe had to be realigned because the record shop didn't have Sid. We didn't have Sid. Sid was gone. And the whole music business changed. Suddenly we had punk rock, and there was anger, and there was an attitude that there'd never been before. And all the great bands that we'd grown up with and loved, they seemed to crumble along with the disappearance of Sid. And we lived in this kind of musical vacuum for a few years, and then one day this kid at school said, "Hey, I'm sure I saw Sid." Don't be silly. Sid's in America. No reason for Sid to come back. The music business is gone. It's nothing now. But we still went to the record shop because it was the record shop. And then one day I walked into the record shop, and there was Sid. The same Sid, the same moustache, but not quite the same, because somehow Sid had lost touch with the record and music industry in the UK. Things had moved on, and Sid was kind of out of place, and it was very sad really. He was still Sid, and he was still an icon. He was greater now than the music scene. But it didn't last, because Sid didn't really have a place anymore. And so after about a year he moved on again, and none of us have seen Sid since. Not even heard rumours about Sid since. Sid went off into the great unknown. However, he lives on in our hearts, in our memories, and every time I pick up these these are the records that I bought from Sid. Well, there's some of the records that I bought from Sid. I still have these. Sid touched these records. Sid, a local legend. Just as a kind of added note, while I was going through my records, I found this. This is the very first record that I made. I made it in a recording booth in Battersea Fun Fair in London when I was about 10 years old. We've all had musical heroes, TV heroes. People from the entertainment world who've been our heroes when we were children and are still our heroes today. One of my heroes, probably my greatest, was the lead singer of a band called Mud. He was called Les Gray. I say was because he died recently, and it's a great shame because he was a great guy. They were on top of the pops. They were #1 with a number of records. Tiger Feet was their biggest seller. It sold 9 million copies around Europe. They never made it in the USA. But Les Gray was one of those guys. I looked at him and I thought, I want to be like him one day. Never made it. But I did meet Les, because when I was doing the radio in the 80s, I did an interview with Les Gray. He came to our town to do a concert, and I met him in his hotel, and we had a talk. And it was like meeting an old friend. He hadn't been at the top of the charts for a long time. And it was Christmas, and he was fed up with eating turkey, and he said, I'd like to go for a Chinese meal. So I said, well, I'll take you down the road and show you where the Chinese restaurant is. And there I was, local radio personality, walking along the high street with my childhood hero, a #1 recording artist, the lead singer of a legendary British pop band. And people were turning around and pointing to me. Hey, there's that guy off the radio. And nobody was taking any notice of Les Gray. So one of my greatest moments, walking down the road with my hero, was also quite sad because they didn't know who he was. How could they not know who Les Gray was? So that was a bizarre experience, but one that I shall always treasure.